Very good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me here, Nandini ji and all the senior staff of IGNOU. And after listening to to Girishwar Mishra ji's very profound talk, I think that the subject of my talk follows quite easily from there. Um, I would like to today talk about the relevance of Savitri and also some of the need for Savitri. I had written 9 gems, but 9 gems in Savitri is a very long talk. When I heard the time limit, I immediately have compressed it and made it, modified it a bit, so that we can finish it in the time, and also it can give you the sense and the kernel of the matter. Of course, those who are interested in reading and knowing about the other gems in Savitri, there is a written and published article that I have called the 9 gems in Savitri. We can always send it to Nandini ji and she can pass it on. But today, I'd like to start with the words of the mother. When she talks about Savitri, she says, Savitri is a marvelous prophetic poem which will be humanity's guide towards the future realization. She uses the word marvelous prophetic poem, prophecy. The word prophetic seems to indicate that it is something that will happen in the future. And the second point that she makes is it is humanity's guide towards its future realization. Now, if we look at scripture and we look at all kinds of words that have been the scripture for us, for example, Gita, or you look at the Vedas and the Upanishads, you will see that there is an element of both prophecy in it and also a guide for the humanity. These are books of wisdom, of knowledge, of deep revelation. And that is why they are perennial. They continue in the consciousness of the race of humanity from age to age, from yuga to yuga. And their appeal is eternal and perennial. You can see the Bhagavad Gita especially has been a book that has been studied and practiced for centuries here. In the same way, Savitri is what the mother calls the Veda of the future. Now, why does she call it the Veda of the future? Because, as Mishra ji pointed out, Sri Aurobindo's yoga is the evolutionary yoga of the growth of consciousness and the change of consciousness to a new consciousness which is described as Gnostic or supramental. So it is the Veda of the future because it is a book that can be our guide and will be our guide for future generations towards what Sri Aurobindo life was dedicated to, and which is the establishment of the life divine on earth. This incredible synthesis of spirit and matter, of not leaving aside material reality, the world, and escaping into a spiritual oblivion or spiritual eternity. It is this life divine which he has spent his whole life bringing down and creating the possibility of, which is what is encapsulated in his work. Now, we are entering into the 150th celebration, the anniversary of Sri Aurobindo's 150th birth anniversary. This is an extremely important time. I remember the mother, she said, she'll continue to live. She says, 1972 was the 100th anniversary of Sri Aurobindo. And I remember how much the mother, how much importance she gave to that event. And she said, it is extremely important that the country and the world celebrate and recognize Sri Aurobindo. In the same way, the reason I chose to speak on Savitri as a homage to him for this 150th birth anniversary is because Savitri contains everything. It contains the future realization, the past wisdom, the answers to all our questions and the problems that beset us. Today, you know that we've passed through an unprecedented time in the world with the pandemic, with coronavirus. And all of us are searching for answers and saying, why did this happen? What, besides the outer reason and conspiracy theories, we're not going into that. But what are the inner dimensions and reasons for the pandemic? What is brought upon out this incredible world event where everybody has had to sit back and re-examine everything that we've been told is the way to do things, and why has it happened? We also see that terrorism, divisions, war, and all the things that humanity has been with for the past millenniums, hundreds and hundreds of years, has not stopped. There is still terrorism going on at the borders. There are still attacks going on some way or the other. Some countries at war with another. We also see that there is anger, hatred, enmity, jealousy amongst us as human beings, in our communities, in our societies, in our universities. Now, how is this going to change? And that is the important question, and that is the relevance of Savitri. How is this going to change? This question was asked and has been asked by all of us. Every philosopher, every scientist, every yogi has always asked these questions. How do we change human nature? Because unless there is a change in human nature, society can't change. And if there is no change in human nature and no change in society, the world will not change. And here I come to the central purpose and need for Savitri. The important thing is the growth of consciousness. If we have to change the world as it is, from a world of war and division and disharmony to a world of unity, mutuality, and harmony, the three key words of the Gnostic consciousness, the three key words of the supramental consciousness, the new consciousness that Savitri embodies. If we want to do that, then we need to work towards and we need to understand the need for a growth of consciousness and a change of human nature. If human nature does not change, the problems that beset human nature will not change. This is a given. And how do we change human nature? This is where I come to Savitri. Savitri is a book that has been written for those who are aspiring to change their consciousness, who are aspiring to change and develop a deeper consciousness, a more wider consciousness, a higher consciousness, a consciousness that embodies all, that is all pervasive, that gets rid of the ego and replaces the ego with the psychic being or the inner being of truth and light and beauty. That is why Savitri has been written. Savitri itself is a legend and a symbol. The legend, of course, you know, is from the Mahabharata. Savitri is about Savitri and Satyavan. Satyavan represents the soul of the earth. Savitri is the divine word, the goddess of the sun. She represents a supramental knowledge and light. And Satyavan, when she is Savitri in the Mahabharata also, Savitri brings back Satyavan from death. It is the conquest of death, and it is the establishment of immortality as a principle in evolution. Now, if you read Savitri, you will see that there are some, I would only mention 5 things that anybody who goes to Savitri can gain from it. First, Savitri has the ability, it's 24,000 verses in iambic pentameter. Do you know? Can you imagine? It's the longest epic written in the English language. It exceeds the Iliad, Homer's Iliad, and the Odyssey, and all the other epics, Dante's, Paradiso, and so on. This is this epic that he wrote. He wrote from a very high overmental, supramental consciousness. He called it the highest consciousness of the mind, which he said most of it came from a very high level of consciousness. And therefore, Savitri has a mantric power in the lines. And therefore, there is this iambic pentameter. I will read you some verses and you will understand the rhythm and the mantric quality of Savitri. Without understanding that, that is how the power of Savitri actually enters into the being. The mother has said, if you want to understand Savitri, you have to grow new brain cells. The gray matter that you have needs to become golden matter, which means new cells are required. The old consciousness finds it difficult to understand Savitri. That is why a lot of people, when they pick up Savitri, put it down, because they can't understand it. So she gives two very important clues, and students who are listening and are interested in reading Savitri, these are the two ways of reading Savitri. One, read it out aloud. Two, read it with a quiet mind. Three, when you read Savitri, read it once, read and leave the passage, read it again. And the passage will soon begin to make sense. It takes time. Sometimes 6 months or a year, or sometimes 1 month, depending on how conscious you are. When the new cells develop, Savitri opens up. And that is how a mantra works. What is a mantra? A mantra is a combination of words which has a meaning deeper than the outer formation of the words. The knowledge of the mantra and the wisdom of the mantra enters to the mind of the hearer, not from the outer formation of the words or meaning of the words, but from the inner symbolism of the words. Similarly, the whole of Savitri, 24,000 verses, is written in is pure mantra. It is mantric in quality, mantric in substance, mantric in its vibrations. In fact, the mother said that if you listen to Savitri and the rhythm and the sound of Savitri, each line ends with the sonority of Om. So can you imagine? When you're listening to Savitri, it is also a kind of a japa, you can say, a mantric Om that takes place. So this is the one of the most important, what should I say, need and reasons why we should read Savitri. The second is its healing power. Now this is important. We have gone through a terrible time of coronavirus, and everybody is, is scared, and there's fear, and people don't know what to do, how to protect themselves. Well, read Savitri. Savitri can help you to protect yourself from all illnesses. In fact, there was a time when I was at the ashram and I was reading Savitri, and I went to meet Amal Kiran, and he told me that, when he had a fracture, Amalda was a writer and a disciple of Sri Aurobindo, living at the time of Sri Aurobindo. And when he had a fracture, he fell down. He asked Sri Aurobindo, "Oh, you're writing from an over-mental consciousness. Is there any verse that can actually heal my physical fracture?" And Sri Aurobindo actually sent him that verse. He said, there are certain passages in Savitri that are so full of power, they can even heal physical deformities and physical fractures. So you can imagine on the mental level and the psychological level how much power Savitri holds. The third gem of Savitri, or the third reason we need to read Savitri and the relevance of Savitri, is its fantastic exposition on the evolutionary need for pain. What is pain? Why do we experience pain? Why is there pain in this world? Pain is the hammer of the gods to chisel man to perfection. And why and when can pain turn to bliss? So all these questions are asked in Savitri. And Savitri has passages and passages explaining those. The fourth reason and the relevance of Savitri today is that Savitri presents a new prototype of the woman. Now you may know that the avataric tradition has been from Ramayana. The hero of all our epics have been men so far. Sri Ram has been the hero of Ramayana. He was an avatar. He brought to humanity the idea of the moral, the mental man, chaste in his ethics. Then came the Mahabharata, and in Mahabharata, the great protagonists of Mahabharata, Sri Krishna, the avatar, and Arjuna, the perfect disciple, who again represents the over-mental idea of dharma and doing dharma. Whether it was Buddha or Christ or whoever it may be, the avatars or Muhammad, so far, in all the epics, the avatars or the great beings, you can call them, have been men. Now here is a book that Sri Aurobindo writes, where the main protagonist is a woman. And who is she? She is an avatar. She is the embodiment of the Supreme Mother who has come down on earth in a human body. Here is an epic for the first time where Sri Aurobindo is pointing to the future. In fact, he even told the mother that for the new being, for the supramental Gnostic being, it is the woman who will first embody it. She will carry that power because she has the strength to be able to embody that consciousness. And this is a new prototype of the avatar, which is very important, especially today, and especially in India. We see that because of various reasons all over the world, I think the rise and the intellect of women, the development and the growth of the feminine consciousness has been to some extent been, what should I say, pushed back for various reasons, historical and otherwise. But here it's very important that unless this feminine consciousness is developed in all of us, not just women, but even men, and this consciousness of the mother, the compassion, the essential need for unity and harmony, love, the principle of love, unless that is developed in human consciousness, there can be no further growth and evolution. That is the key principle of Savitri. In fact, there's a whole book and there's debates on love and death. And do you know what is the greatest power? Somebody asked the mother, what is the greatest power on earth? And she replied very simply, love. And even in Savitri, it is love that can conquer death. It is love that conquers death. And Savitri embodies that love. Lastly, Savitri is a book of revelation. And by revelation, I mean that if you were to just concentrate for a few minutes and open Savitri to any page with a question in your mind, you will receive an answer, an illumination. Now that great books of scripture have that ability and that power. And therefore, Savitri can be used for that purpose. In fact, I'd like to read here what the mother has said. Beautiful passage. If you are depressed, If you feel miserable, if you do not succeed in what you do, or else if what happens is always the contrary of what you expect, however much you try, if it has come to such a pass that you lose your temper, life becomes disgusting, and you are unhappy, then immediately take Savitri, and after a moment's concentration, open it at any page and read. You will see that all your misery disappears like smoke, and you will have the strength to overcome the worst sorrows. You will no longer feel that which was tormenting you. Instead, you will feel a strange happiness, a reversal of consciousness, along with the energy and force to conquer everything, as though there was nothing impossible. And you will feel this inexhaustible joy that purifies everything. Well, I'd like to end by reading one passage of Savitri, just to give you a sense of what Savitri sounds like. This is on mantra. As when the mantra sinks in yoga's ear, its message enters stirring the blind brain and keeps in the dim, ignorant cells its sound. The hearer understands a form of words, and musing on the index thought it holds, he strives to read it with the laboring mind, but finds bright hints, not the embodied truth. Then, falling silent in himself to know, he meets the deeper listening of his soul. The word repeats itself in rhythmic strains. Thought, vision, feeling, sense, the body's self are seized unutterably, and he endures an ecstasy and an immortal change. He feels a wideness and becomes a power. All knowledge rushes in him like a sea, transmuted by the white spiritual ray. He walks in naked heavens of joy and calm, sees the God face, and hears transcendent speech. Well, this is what happens to us when we read Savitri. This is the supreme mantra that Sri Aurobindo has given to humanity, the Veda of the future, the book of Revelation. Thank you.